Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads, where we are continuing in the Magic Circle by Katherine Neville. In our last video, there were still lots of interesting conversations. So there was talk about Sanskrit, there was talk about salt, there was talk about Merlin's cave, there was talk about Solomon, there was talk about dancing. And Wolfgang picked up a note from work that was for Ariel. And it was this, not really coded, but information that only she would understand for what it was other than what it said. That Sam had spoken with somebody. Who did he talk to? Sam had spoken to somebody and got some clarification on her uncle Ernest. So, and then he was headed to Salt Lake City to do some more research. That's where we stopped. This section is titled The Vineyard. There's different quotes. So it says, in response to an oracle of the goddess Cybele, Dionysus learned the use of grapes from a snake. Thereupon, he invented the most primitive method of making wine. And that's from Carl Carigny about Dionysus. Okay. I am the true vine, and my father is the husbandman. Jesus of Nazareth in the Gospel of John 15:1. And God said, I do set my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and the earth. And I will remember my covenant, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine. God's covenant with Noah, Genesis 9:12-21. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear and the pomegranates bud forth. There I will give thee my loves. Song of Solomon 7:12. Interesting. Okay, mostly Bible verses and one about Dionysus. Okay. It was after dusk when Wolfgang and I were on the road that ran out of town along the Danube. The deep periwinkle sky was already sprinkled with a few stars. We left behind the fat yellow moon just rising over the city of Vienna. We didn't speak much during the trip. Though I was emotionally drained, I couldn't close my eyes. Soon, the city lights had vanished, and we followed the broad, graceful sweep of river west toward the Wachau wine country. Wolfgang drove with the same gracefully timed precision he displayed when skiing. And I looked out the windows at the broad, glassy surface of the river to one side and clusters of hill villages stacked up like hobbit houses just beside the road on the other. In less than an hour, we arrived at the town of Krems, where Wolfgang's office was located. By now, the moon was high. Sorry, my bulb's going out, sorry. Okay, by now the moon was high, bathing the surrounding hills in light. We took the branch off the main road uphill into the charming walled town of Krems, with its interesting assortment of whitewashed buildings whose potpourri of styles could be picked out in the bright moonlight. Renaissance, Gothic, Baroque, Romanesque. We passed through the town and the Hormarkt, H-O-H-E-R, marked, no E, interesting, with its square of country palaces and museums. But to my surprise, Wolfgang headed out of town once more on a narrower, winding road that led up into the open hill country with thick vineyards high above the village. I glanced at his profile, outlined by the dull green glow of the dash lights. I thought the plan was to drop by your office the very first thing, to go over tomorrow's agenda, I said. Yes, but my office is in my home. Oh, Wolfgang explained, his eyes still on the road ahead. It isn't far, only a few kilometers more. We'll be there any moment. The road had now become narrower and seemed to be running out of pavement as we continued up the steep hill that led farther and farther from the river and its small pockets of habitation. We passed a tiny thatched mud shed that was built into the hillside beside the road, and the kind where grape pickers store baskets and tools and take shelter during those sudden drenching rains, so common here in the hill country. Beyond it, there was nothing suggesting civilization except, of course, row after row of grapevines under cultivation. When we reached the hilltop, the vineyards abruptly stopped and the road dead-ended at a bridge spanning a wide creek. A cloud momentarily shadowed the moon, so it was hard to discern the outline of the rugged and very high stone wall that seemed to provide an impasse on the opposite bank. Wolfgang stopped the car just before the bridge and got out. I thought perhaps I should do likewise, but suddenly a blaze of floodlights switched on, drenching the landscape in golden light like an outdoor theater set. I stared in awed disbelief at the view through the windshield. What I'd taken for a high pasture wall was instead the crenellated rampart of an ancient Austrian burg, a fortress-like stonework, and what I believed to be a creek was really a half-filled moat, its mossy granite walls sloping down into the water. High wooden gates were embedded in the rampart. These stood open so I could see the illuminated interior within. A broad grassy courtyard, an ancient oak tree spreading its branches above the sweep of lawn, and beyond it, the circular stone form of a true medieval castle. Wolfgang returned to the car without a word, put it in low gear, and drove slowly over the drawbridge through the open gates. He parked on the grass beneath the oak, just beside an old stone well. He switched off the ignition and looked at me, almost shyly. Your house? I said, amazed. How do you say it? A man's house is his castle? He asked. But in my case, what was left to me was an attractive pile of rocks that nearly 1,000 years ago formed a castle here above what would one day be the town of Krems. I've spent 10 years and most of my leisure time and income, I admit, finding experts to assist me in trying to restore it. Except for those few, and Bettina, who thinks I am crazy to be doing this, you are the only one I've brought here. Tell me, do you like it? It's incredible, I said. I got out of the car for a better look. Wolfgang joined me as I walked around the courtyard studying each detail. It was true that ruined castles dotted nearly every hill throughout Germany and Austria. They were so lovely and seemed to have such terrific views. I'd often wondered why no one bothered to restore them. Now I appreciated what effort must have gone into this one. Even the stones of the ramparts were clearly hewn, laid, and mortared by hand. When Wolfgang unlocked the doors of the castle, let me inside, and flicked on the lights, I was even more astounded. We stood on the slate-paved floor of a large circular tower. The ceiling soared what must have been 60 feet above us, with a complex domed skylight like a kaleidoscope at the top through which I could see the night sky. The interior was illuminated by a scattering of embedded lights that twinkled, star-like, from niches set in the stone walls. A metal scaffolding rose like an abstract sculpture from the floor to the top of the tower, supporting from beneath those assorted structures in various shapes that looked like treetops, jutting at random angles from the outer stone wall. I'm having a hard time visualizing that. Each house was enclosed by a curved wall of hand-polished wood in warm, graduated shades, and each had a plexiglass section of wall, a floor-to-ceiling picture window facing the central open space and curving up partially across the ceiling like a skylight to let in light from above. It took a moment before I saw that these chambers were connected by a suspended spiral of wooden steps that ran along the circular perimeter of the outer wall. The result was absolutely breathtaking. Let me just look how far we're going here. Okay. It reminds me of those underground cities Dacian spoke of, I told Wolfgang, like a magical cavern hidden within a mountain. And yet, by day, it is completely filled with light, he said. In those medieval style window openings, I can't even say these words, machicolations and fenestrations. I've installed glass and added skylights everywhere, as you will see. When we have breakfast here tomorrow morning, sunlight will flood the place. We're staying here tonight? I tried to suppress the flutters this idea caused. I was certain you would be too exhausted to go back to your Uncle Lafcadio's tonight, as you'd planned, he told me, and my house is so near the monastery where we're going tomorrow morning. It's fine, I told him, if it won't be too much trouble. It's all arranged, he assured me. We'll have a light supper at a little inn just below that belongs to the vineyard. It overlooks the river. But first, I'd like to show you the rest of the castle. That is, if you'd like. I'd be delighted, I told him. I've never seen anything like it before. And I think that's where we'll stop before the tour. All right. Interesting. Quite a house or castle that he owns. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.